The Indiana Fever didn't just beat the Las Vegas Aces. They didn't just upset one of the WNBA's most successful franchises. They made history. On a night when many fans weren't even sure Caitlin Clark would play because of her back injury, Indiana walked into Las Vegas and delivered one of the most dominant performances of the season. By the final buzzer, multiple franchise records had fallen. League history had been rewritten. Caitlin Clark reached a milestone faster than any player the WNBA has ever seen. Kelsey Mitchell climbed past legends in the record books. Sophie Cunningham delivered one of the most efficient shooting performances in Fever history. And the Indiana Fever didn't just win. They handed the Aces one of the most shocking statistical collapses the league has ever witnessed. But here's what's even crazier. Hidden inside the final box score is a statistic that tells an even bigger story. It's not about Indiana. It's about Las Vegas. And it may be one of the most embarrassing records any championship contender has ever set. We'll break down exactly what happened, why this game mattered far beyond the final score, and what it could mean for the WNBA playoff race moving forward. Before we jump into the action, if you enjoy fact-based WNBA coverage, game analysis, player stories, and the biggest basketball headlines, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Our goal isn't to chase rumors or clickbait. We break down the numbers, the context, and the stories behind the biggest moments in women's basketball. And trust me, if you think this game was only about Caitlin Clark, you're going to be surprised by what happened later in the night. Coming into this matchup, nearly every headline centered on one question. Would Caitlin Clark even be able to play? After missing time with a back injury, Indiana had been cautious with its franchise star. Head coach Stephanie White made it clear before tip-off that if Clark played, her minutes would be carefully managed. The priority wasn't one regular season game. It was keeping their point guard healthy for the second half of the season and, hopefully, a deep playoff run. Across the floor stood a team that needed no introduction. The Las Vegas Aces. Led by former MVP Aya Wilson and coached by Becky Hammon, the Aces entered the night with one of the league's most talented rosters and championship expectations once again. On paper, many expected Las Vegas to take advantage of Clark's limited minutes. Instead, the exact opposite happened. From the opening possession, Indiana looked faster, more connected, and more confident. The ball moved with purpose. The defense forced difficult shots. Every player seemed to understand exactly where to be. And as the game unfolded, it became clear that this wasn't simply another regular season victory. It was a statement. Because while everyone was watching Caitlin Clark's return, the entire Fever roster was quietly putting together one of the most historic nights in franchise history. And it all started with a player who wasn't trying to score 30 points. She was trying to prove that even in limited minutes, she could still change the game. As the opening quarter unfolded, one thing became obvious. Caitlin Clark was back. But this wasn't the same aggressive Clark fans are used to seeing. Every movement was calculated. Every sprint looked controlled. Every substitution reminded everyone that Indiana wasn't taking any unnecessary risks. Before the game, head coach Stephanie White confirmed the plan. Clark's minutes would be limited to around 20 to 25 minutes as she continued working her way back from a back injury. The Fever weren't focused on winning one game in July. They were thinking much bigger. With playoff hopes growing stronger every week, keeping their franchise player healthy was the priority. That decision added another layer of intrigue to the matchup. Could Indiana compete against one of the WNBA's elite teams with its best player on a minutes restriction? The answer came almost immediately. Instead of forcing difficult shots or trying to put up huge scoring numbers, Clark played the role of floor general. She pushed the pace when opportunities appeared. She found open teammates. She manipulated the defense with her passing. And she made every possession count. That's something that has defined Clark throughout her basketball career. Even on nights when she isn't leading the scoreboard, she has a way of controlling the rhythm of the game. Las Vegas quickly discovered that limiting Clark's scoring doesn't necessarily stop Indiana's offense. If defenders crowded her beyond the three-point line, she found the open cutter. If they collapsed into the paint, she kicked the ball out for clean perimeter looks. And if they hesitated for even a second, she made them pay with another pinpoint pass. Then came the moment that quietly made WNBA history. Late in the game, Clark recorded another assist, one that may have looked routine in real time. But statistically, it was anything but ordinary. That pass gave her 600 career assists, making her the fastest player in WNBA history to reach that milestone, accomplishing it in just 72 career games. Think about that for a moment. The WNBA has featured some of the greatest point guards the sport has ever seen. Players like Sue Bird spent nearly 2 decades building Hall of Fame careers through elite playmaking. Clark reached 600 assists in barely more than a season's worth of games played. That doesn't diminish what earlier legends accomplished. Instead, it highlights just how extraordinary Clark's pace has been since entering the league. And the numbers don't stop there. Despite having her playing time carefully managed this season, Clark has continued producing at an elite level. Entering this stretch of games, she was averaging more than 20 points per game while playing fewer minutes than many of the league's high-volume guards. That's a reflection of efficiency rather than opportunity. Less time on the court, yet the same ability to influence winning. By the time Stephanie White took Clark out after roughly 24 minutes, her night looked modest compared to some of her explosive performances. She finished with 12 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. For most players, that's a solid performance. For Clark, it was another reminder that impact isn't always measured by scoring alone. In less than half an hour, she helped direct Indiana's offense, controlled the pace, and added another historic achievement to her resume. But here's the remarkable part. While fans and broadcasters celebrated Clark's milestone, another Fever star was quietly putting together one of the greatest performers. While much of the basketball world was focused on Caitlin Clark's historic assist milestone, another Indiana Fever star was quietly putting together a performance that deserved just as many headlines. That player was Kelsey Mitchell. And if you've watched the Fever this season, you know this wasn't a surprise. Mitchell has been one of the WNBA's most consistent scorers for years. She doesn't need constant attention. She doesn't chase viral moments. She simply shows up, attacks defenses, and fills up the scoreboard. Against Las Vegas, she did exactly that once again. From the opening quarter, Mitchell looked comfortable. She attacked off the dribble. She knocked down perimeter shots. She finished through contact. And every time the Aces tried to slow Indiana's momentum, Mitchell seemed to have an answer. By the final buzzer, she had scored 27 points, extending one of the hottest stretches of her professional career. But the points only tell part of the story. Because while she was helping Indiana build a commanding lead, she was also climbing the WNBA record books. First came a major franchise milestone. Mitchell appeared in her 300th regular season game with the Indiana Fever, becoming only the second player in franchise history to reach that mark, joining Fever legend Tamika Catchings. That statistic speaks to something every championship team values: availability. Year after year, Mitchell has been one of Indiana's most dependable players, continuing to produce through roster changes, coaching changes, and rebuilding seasons. Then came another historic achievement. Mitchell knocked down another three-pointer, giving her 729 career three-pointers and moving her past Katie Douglas into 7th place on the WNBA's all-time three-point list. Think about what that means. The names ahead of her include some of the greatest shooters the league has ever seen. Every season, Mitchell continues moving closer to basketball immortality. But perhaps the most impressive accomplishment of the night wasn't a career total. It was consistency. Mitchell scored in double figures for the 38th consecutive regular season game, breaking Tamika Catchings' franchise record. 38 straight games. No long scoring droughts. No disappearing against elite defenses. Just night after night of reliable production. For any scorer, that's incredibly difficult. For a guard facing the opponent's best perimeter defender every game, it's even more remarkable. And the streak didn't stop there. This game also marked Mitchell's 6th consecutive game with at least 25 points. That placed her among the longest 25-point scoring streaks in WNBA history, putting her alongside elite names like Tina Charles and Aya Wilson. The significance wasn't lost on anyone watching. She wasn't just helping Indiana win. She was producing at a level rarely seen in league history. What makes Mitchell so difficult to defend isn't just her shooting. It's her speed. Ask almost any coach or player around the league, and they'll tell you the same thing. Once Mitchell gets a step, she's incredibly hard to stay in front of. She can pull up from three. She can attack the rim. She can score in transition. And because defenses must respect every part of her offensive game, she constantly forces defenders into impossible decisions. Las Vegas experienced that firsthand. Whenever the Aces focused too much attention on Caitlin Clark, Mitchell made them pay. Whenever they tried to slow Mitchell, Clark found the open teammate. It became a perfect balance that kept Indiana's offense flowing all night. By the end of the evening, Mitchell had added multiple franchise and league milestones to an already outstanding performance. Yet somehow, she still wasn't the most efficient scorer on the floor. Because coming off the bench was another Fever player who delivered one of the greatest shooting performances in franchise history. And the numbers behind that performance are almost hard to believe. CS of her career. And by the end of the night, she would climb past franchise legend Tamika Catchings, continue chasing WNBA history, and prove once again why she's one of the most underrated scorers in professional basketball. That player was Kelsey Mitchell. If Kelsey Mitchell was the steady force that kept Indiana's offense rolling, then Sophie Cunningham was the spark that turned a great performance into a historic one. Coming off the bench, Cunningham wasted no time making an impact. Every time Las Vegas seemed ready to put together a run, she answered. A catch-and-shoot three. A transition bucket. Another deep shot that silenced the crowd. By the second half, it felt like every clean look she got was finding the bottom of the net. And that's exactly what happened. Cunningham finished the night with 20 points, knocking down 6 of her 7 three-point attempts. That's an incredible 85.7% from beyond the arc against one of the league's top defensive teams. For perspective, most elite three-point shooters celebrate a night when they shoot 45 or 50%. Cunningham nearly doubled that efficiency. But here's where the performance becomes even more remarkable. According to advanced statistics, Cunningham posted the most efficient 20-point scoring game in Indiana Fever franchise history by true shooting percentage. For fans unfamiliar with the metric, true shooting percentage goes beyond basic field goal percentage. It factors in two-point shots, three-pointers, and free throws to measure overall scoring efficiency. It's considered one of the best ways to evaluate how effectively a player scores. And on this night, Cunningham was almost flawless. Every possession seemed to produce points. Every shot felt automatic. She wasn't forcing difficult attempts. She was simply taking what the defense gave her, and making Las Vegas pay every single time. What's even more impressive is that this wasn't an isolated performance. Since arriving in Indiana, Cunningham has become one of the WNBA's most reliable perimeter shooters. Her three-point percentage has consistently ranked among the league's best, giving Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell another dangerous floor spacer who forces defenses to make impossible choices. Help on Clark. And Cunningham gets an open three. Double Mitchell. And Cunningham is waiting in the corner. That's the kind of balance every championship contender wants. But this game wasn't about one hot shooter. It was about an entire team playing connected basketball. By the end of the night, 6 different Fever players scored in double figures. Think about what that says. This wasn't one superstar carrying the offense. It wasn't one player taking over with 40 points. It was everyone contributing. Aaliyah Boston controlled the paint with another strong all-around performance, scoring 19 points while grabbing 11 rebounds for a double-double. She also spent much of the evening battling Aya Wilson on both ends of the floor, making every possession difficult. Off the bench, players like Ty Harris and Monique Billings provided valuable scoring and energy exactly when Indiana needed it. That's what separates good teams from dangerous teams. Everyone knows their role. Everyone contributes. And when one player has an off possession, someone else steps up. Then came another franchise milestone. The victory became one of the largest winning margins in Indiana Fever history, a statement performance against one of the WNBA's premier organizations. But perhaps the most impressive statistic wasn't found in any individual box score. It was how Indiana played together. The Fever outshot Las Vegas from both 2-point and 3-point range. They shared the basketball. They limited turnovers. They controlled the glass. They defended with energy for all 4 quarters. In other words, they didn't win because one player got hot. They won because they executed better in nearly every phase of the game. And that's why this victory caught so many people by surprise. The Las Vegas Aces weren't facing a one-player team. They were facing a complete basketball team that trusted one another, moved the ball, defended with purpose, and capitalized on almost every mistake. For the Fever, it was a glimpse of what this roster can become when everyone is healthy and playing together. But while Indiana was celebrating one of its biggest wins of the season, there's another side to this story. Because for every record the Fever celebrated, the Las Vegas Aces were left searching for answers. This wasn't just a loss. It was one of the most surprising performances we've seen from one of the WNBA's premier franchises. And the numbers explain why. Just days before facing Indiana, Las Vegas had looked like a championship contender once again. They had defeated the Phoenix Mercury by 48 points, one of the most dominant victories of the season. Everything appeared to be clicking. The offense was flowing. The defense was forcing turnovers. And many fans believed the Aces were hitting their stride at exactly the right time. Then came Indiana. Instead of building on that momentum, Las Vegas suffered a 34-point defeat on its home floor. When you compare those two games, the swing in point differential reaches 82 points, a figure widely reported as the largest game-to-game point differential swing in WNBA history. That's not just an unusual statistic. It highlights how dramatically different the Aces looked in the span of only a few days. So, what changed? Some post-game discussion focused on officiating. Aya Wilson acknowledged there were a few calls she felt were questionable, but also made something equally important clear. She said the Aces shouldn't put themselves in positions where officiating becomes part of the conversation. In other words, she recognized that the team had bigger issues than a few whistles. Head coach Becky Hammon pointed to another factor: the schedule. Playing multiple games in a short stretch can be physically demanding, especially against a fast-paced team like Indiana. Hammon also credited the Fever for playing the more physical game from start to finish. But when you study the box score, the statistics suggest Indiana simply outplayed Las Vegas in nearly every area. The Fever controlled the rebounding battle. They moved the basketball more effectively, finishing with more assists. They protected the ball, committing fewer turnovers. They shot significantly better from both inside the arc and from three-point range. Indiana also converted 18 of its 19 free throws, showing discipline and execution whenever opportunities came at the line. Those are the kinds of numbers that usually decide basketball games. Not controversial calls. Not isolated possessions. But sustained execution over 40 minutes. Defensively, Indiana also deserves enormous credit. Aaliyah Boston battled Aya Wilson throughout the night, making every touch difficult while still producing a double-double of her own. The Fever rotated well, closed out on shooters, communicated through screens, and consistently forced Las Vegas into uncomfortable possessions. Championship teams usually don't lose because of one mistake. They lose when another team executes better in every phase of the game. That's exactly what happened here. For Indiana, this victory was proof that when healthy, they can compete with anyone in the WNBA. For Las Vegas, it became a reminder that talent alone doesn't guarantee success. Every contender experiences difficult nights during a long season. The real test is how quickly a team responds. Will this game become nothing more than a temporary setback for the Aces? Or will it expose issues they need to solve before the playoffs begin? Only the next few weeks will answer that question. But one thing is already certain. On this night, the Indiana Fever didn't simply defeat one of the league's best teams. They earned that victory through better defense, better ball movement, greater efficiency, and a complete team performance from the opening tip to the final buzzer. And that may be the most important takeaway of all. It painted an alarming picture for Las Vegas. And when you compare it to what the Aces had done just days earlier, it becomes one of the most astonishing statistical swings the WNBA has ever seen. When the final buzzer sounded, one thing was clear. This wasn't just another regular season win. It was a statement. The Indiana Fever didn't rely on one superstar to carry them. Caitlin Clark made history with the fastest 600 assists in WNBA history. Kelsey Mitchell continued one of the hottest scoring streaks in the league. Sophie Cunningham delivered one of the most efficient shooting nights in franchise history. And 6 different Fever players scored in double figures. That's what made this victory so impressive. It wasn't about one player. It was about complete team basketball. For Indiana, this game showed just how dangerous they can be when everyone is healthy and contributing. For Las Vegas, it's a reminder that even championship contenders have nights where nothing goes according to plan. The real test is how they respond. One game doesn't decide a season, but it can change the conversation. and after this performance, the Fever have shown they're capable of competing with anyone in the WNBA. Now it's your turn. Do you think this was Indiana's biggest win of the season? Can Caitlin Clark and the Fever make a deep playoff run? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more WNBA news, game analysis, and player stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.